This is the Hype Squad with Charli McConnell, a podcast where women can be full of themselves and brag about what they're good at. Each week, we're going to bring you conversations covering topics like motherhood, life, relationships, business, and everything in between, because anything is possible with your very own Hype Squad. What's up, ladies? Welcome back to the Hype Squad. I'm your host, Charli McConnell. I'm really excited that you're here today for this solo episode. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about communication, specifically in relationships, but I'm sure we'll talk about it in multiple ways. I said to someone the other day that if I was going to rebrand myself as a life coach, because currently I'm a women's coach, that's what I say. I only work with women. And I said the other day, if I was going to rebrand that to any other type of coach, it would be a communication coach, because it is by far the most popular thing that I work on with clients. And I think that's so indicative of the struggles that so many of us have just in general is communication. It's hard to talk about things with people, especially in relationships, but really it's across the board, to your coworkers, to your boss, to your family members, to your parents, hell, even to your neighbors, right? And so to look at your romantic relationship, I would say that the romantic relationship is the most vulnerable place to communicate. And that in turn creates the most stress for myself, the people I work with. I feel like in general, but I don't want to make that huge of a claim. But I think that communication in relationships is one of the hardest things that we have to work through. And you never really get to a place of, okay, I'm good. Like, I have mastered communication. I'm set. That's not a real place, right? There is always going to be something that comes up that is really hard to talk about or hard to navigate or something that you've never dealt with before. And just some of the most popular things that are difficult to talk about, sex. A lot of people struggle talking about sex, myself included, right? These things that I say that I work on clients are also huge struggles of mine as well, because I am human. I am a deeply flawed human that struggles with things just like everyone else. And I never want to come across that I have all of these things figured out. And one of the things that came up recently with a coaching client, specifically in her relationship and working on communication, I thought would be a really cool thing to share here, because she's not special. She's not alone. Like, I feel like this is something that so many of us struggle with. And it's opening up and being vulnerable in any capacity with your romantic partner. I feel like so many times, if we are with someone that we haven't been with for our entire life, which I feel like that includes almost all of us, meaning that we were in some other type of relationship in our history that tainted us in some way, right? Either we were told, and maybe not just like in a relationship, maybe in a family dynamic or a friendship dynamic where someone made you feel like it was not safe to be vulnerable. It was not safe to talk about hard things or to ask hard questions. And you have now carried that potentially into your current romantic partnership. It happens to all of us. It really does. And you have to basically retrain your brain in this new relationship, because it's not fair for us to take out past lived traumas on our current relationship, but it happens every single day. And in most of those situations, all of those situations, you have to have radical accountability for yourself to say, what part am I playing in this? What part am I responsible for in this dynamic? And then working your way back from there. Like, how do I change this? How do I show up differently? And that sort of radical honesty with yourself is really fucking hard. It is. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It is hard to be that honest, brutally honest with yourself about the part that you're playing in the entire scenario. because so many of us want to blame the other person on the other side of the conversation, that they're not making us feel safe or they're not creating a space to feel safe. Well, that's not their responsibility. That's our responsibility as being the communicator in the relationship, or, the speaker in any way, right? And I think that conversation any conversation, any sort of communication breeds more communication. And so it's like a muscle. It's like you have to work it out. You have to give yourself dedicated time in your relationship where you can speak freely. The way that I like to present that and encourage my clients to do that is to set a time every day, every other day, some sort of like repeatable occurrence that you dedicate to uninterrupted time with your partner. That could be take your dog for a walk around the block. That could be sitting and having coffee in the morning. It could be, one of you taking a bubble bath while the other one sits beside you, or maybe taking a bubble bath at the same time, or maybe you both get in the shower and take a shower, not necessarily sexual, but just to talk about your day. It's something you both need to do. You both need to take a shower. Let's do it together so we can talk, right? Maybe it will breed some intimacy. Getting ready in the morning, having pillow talk at the end of the night without a TV or phones. Really, it's dedicated time to talking to each other without any sort of distractions, without any sort of outside noise, no kids running around, no phones in our hands, no TV in the background, locked in and connected with each other. I always like a walk and talk. So many things that are helpful for me include walking in some way. And in a relationship dynamic, in a partnership with another person, walking, you're not watching TV, you shouldn't be on your phone. You're looking out into nature, you're moving your body. Like there's just a lot of really pro things to walking, like a lot of positive things. And so I always encourage, if you can do it in a walking format of some kind, walking around your neighborhood, walking to, a restaurant, or walking downtown. I really like that dynamic because I feel like that's something that checks a couple of different boxes, and it's winding down from your day, or you're doing it in the morning, regardless of how you do it, how it shows up for you. Giving time to your relationship to communicate is crucial. And maybe you're not talking about anything difficult or vulnerable. You're just talking about your day. And maybe the next day, the recap of the day is a little bit shorter, and then you start talking about other things. Or it's again like a muscle. You're working it out, you're flexing it. Each time that you do it and you show up for each other, you feel a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more comfortable. And there's also this dynamic to relationships, in my opinion and in my experience, that one person has to set the tone for any part of the relationship, right? And I'm sure you can look at your relationship or maybe a past relationship, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Like one person typically sets the tone for your sex life, the amount of sex you're having, and it's based off that person's sexual drive, right? And then the other person is always trying to meet that drive, something along those lines. Or fitness, like one person's always setting the bar, like let's do that. You name it. There is something to give as an example. But I think with communication, that's also true. Someone has to set the bar for, this is how I want to communicate. This is the type of space I want this to be. And you in turn encourage your partner to show up in the same way. You are bringing them up to their level, encouraging, uplifting them, and setting the bar pretty high for communication. And they're not going to meet you there right away if you're that person, or maybe your partner is that person, but it's like the hype squad, right? It's like being encouraged or being around uplifting people, or people who communicate really well will then in turn make you want to do better yourself. One of the tools I wanted to speak about specifically are these little conversation cards. And I'm going to link them in the show notes, but I talk about these a lot. I share these a lot with clients, and I tell them to buy them. And there's probably a ton of different versions of this, but this is the one I specifically do. So it's the best self intimacy. What's it called? Intimacy. It just says intimacy, but there are 150 prompts in here. And so what they are just these cards. They're color coded. Each color means something different. The red is intimacy. So, and I'm going to read some of these questions just to give you some ideas, because this is such an amazing tool to use in your relationship. For so many reasons, because, the person who's setting the bar for communication typically carries the burden of asking the questions or starting the conversation. And that can get really frustrating and feel really unbalanced and sometimes unfair that all of that falls on them. And sometimes they'll get resentful about that. Like, I keep trying to have these conversations with you and you're not meeting me halfway, or you're not initiating conversations. It's always me. Same could be said for sex and, multiple different versions of this. But these conversation cards are really fun because the burden doesn't lie on anyone. You take a couple, you put them in your purse for date night, or you take a couple and put them in your pocket for a walk. And it's a way of starting conversation depending on the nature of your relationship and how comfortable you are being vulnerable. You can pick which categories you pull cards from. Or if it's like everything's on the table, you just close your eyes and pick a card. These are a game changer. So I'm going to read you a couple just so you have an idea of what I'm talking about. So this first one I pulled, intimacy, is red. And so this question is, how many times do you want to be intimate each week? Question mark. And then you let them answer, and then you answer in return, right? And then this could probably spark a lot of conversation. Like, you want to have sex 20 times a week? That's ridiculous. Like, you're not for real. Be more for real. Like, what's a real example? Like, so, you know what I mean? Like, it gives fun little banter. All right. So that's an intimacy example. All right. So the next one I'm going to pull is blue, and this is relationship. So this question is, if our relationship ended tomorrow, what 3 things would you miss the most? It's an interesting question. And a lot of these are pretty thought provoking. I always say, don't read the questions first. Don't go into the conversation with an unfair advantage. Make sure both of you are hearing it for the first time so that you both have to think about the answer. And then you can kind of stumble through your answers and maybe you answer it together. All right. I'm going to keep giving examples. So yellow is random. Which animal do you think is your spirit animal and why? I think this one's really fun. Let's see. All right. So green is life. What aspects do you miss about being single? That's pretty fun. All right. So what's another color? Okay. So this is like dark blue. About you is the theme for this one. Which couple in our life do you wish to be either more alike or nothing alike? Explain. Okay. And then there's a gray one, which is the past category. Describe a time or moment in your life when you felt lonely or unloved. That one's pretty deep. And some of these can be really deep. All right. So there was yellow, green, blue. I think I did all of them, but I hope you understand the thought process behind this. And, I gave this as a homework assignment to a client of mine. Actually, I've given it to several clients of mine, but one specifically recently that I'm thinking of. And at first I said, like, let's just start small. Like, let's do 1 or 2 cards a day and make that your goal. And she did 1 card at dinner with her partner, and then she stopped and he said, well, I want to do another one, which surprised the hell out of her. And I think it was a really great example of how something like this can be fun. And it's not like, oh, she's thinking of these questions specifically, or she's being passive aggressive, or there's an underlining meaning to this. No, these cards don't know shit about you. They don't care. Like, they're just random ass questions. And so it makes it like a more even playing field between the partners in the relationship. And I think it just really breeds great conversation. My husband and I will take these on date nights one of the rules that we have for date night is that we cannot talk about our daughter and we can't talk about work. And we try to do at least the entire dinner portion of our date night where that's the rule. And we'll use these cards specifically to facilitate conversation, because when you've been married or in a relationship for a long time, and if you have kids or if you have successful, busy careers, all of you fall into these categories to some extent. It's really hard not to talk about those things because they're so present in your life. You've just spent the entire day working. You have so much to share. It becomes like a monotonous conversation about recapping your day. And it's a lot of work and a lot of effort to create conversations with your partner that aren't about those same things over and over and over again. And this is a great little cheating tool. I mean, it's not even cheating. It's just, it takes all the thought out of it, or all of the background work, which I work smarter, not harder, period, in your relationship as well. I'm a huge proponent of that. So, but in telling the story about my client, he wanted to do another one. And so she did it. And so now we've kind of changed the assignment to setting a time goal. So for example, 20 minutes of conversation cards, because quite honestly, some of these questions are pretty fast, easy answers. And some of them are very thought provoking and could turn into a huge conversation after one card. So having more of a time frame goal could breed a lot more communication opportunities. So if you are interested in trying these cards, I want to encourage you to do the same. Set a timer for like 20 minutes, 15, whatever you have time for, as opposed to just one card, and go the entire time. And maybe you'll decide, okay, we can add 10 more minutes. We're having a lot of fun. Or you take them on your date nights, or you sit at home and have dinner together with the conversation cards. I cannot encourage you more to do something like this. Maybe you find a different type of card. They're really fun, especially the spicy, intimate ones, to encourage you to talk more about sex. And we'll talk about that in a different episode. But I really wanted to give this tool for everyone, because it can be so helpful. It's also really fun, like for friend groups, right? Like if you are, with a bigger group of friends, or you're on a road trip, or you're on vacation, and it's like, okay, we're like, it's crickets in here. We're running out of stuff to do. Get something like this. Like, it's fun. And we could all use a little more fun, especially in our relationships, whether it's intimate relationships or not, and in communication. Like, if you can make communication more fun, you're more likely to do it. And it should be fun. It's getting to know the person that you're sharing your life with, or that you have in your life at any capacity. I want to encourage that at every step of the way. So I hope that was helpful for you to hear this week, today. And like I said, I'll put the link in the show notes. I encourage you all to check it out, or to check out some other version of this, whatever you can do to create a little more simplicity and ease around communication in your life, period. So yeah, thanks for coming and getting hyped with me. I will share. Okay, let me do my hype list, because I can't forget that. Solo episodes are always hard for me to remember to do that. Okay, so my hype list, which we do the hype list on every episode, is something that you've achieved and an obstacle that you overcame in order to achieve it. So, on the fly, something that I have achieved is creating more conversation in my relationship. I'm just going to go with the theme of this episode. It's definitely been an achievement, and it was not easy. And the obstacle that I overcame was, I would say, realizing that my husband and I are very different, and we have very different approaches to communication. And for so many years, I just drilled in him, communicate, like all day, all night. And what was so interesting about that dynamic is he like fought it every step of the way. And so it was always me pushing him, always me pushing him. And then there was a clear defining shift in our relationship where he started communicating and then started pushing me in ways that I had always pushed him. And it was such a hard thing for me because I was so used to being the one encouraging communication. And then for him to call me out on the things that I didn't want to talk about was like, damn, this is my job. Like, I'm the one that's supposed to be pushing us to communicate, not you. Like, what the hell? Like, our roles have totally shifted. And I had to be radically honest with myself. Like, I only wanted to communicate when it suited me, when it served my goals. And when the shift happened in our relationship, where now he was asking me to communicate about things I considered hard, I had to be really honest with myself and very vulnerable and really struggled through it. And then got to the other side of, okay, like I low key love this for us that he is pushing me to to like just pushing my edges, pushing me to change my boundaries around this and encouraging me because it's almost like he learned something from me and then flipped it on me. And that was very sobering. But now I can really appreciate it. I think that was the obstacle that we had to overcome in order to be able to communicate as well as we do now. And we have so many tools that we use. We use conversation cards. We use fun games. We try to talk about really big life goals and ideas and things like that. And it's been really great for us. And so I want to encourage you to do the same. Like I say all the time, like for our experience in our relationship and for a lot of people that I've witnessed, it's really difficult for both people to grow equally at the same time. And what I have seen being the most ideal is that one person is always surpassing and then pulling the other one up to them. And it's like this ebb and flow, right? Where you may always think that you're the one pulling the other person up. And then one day that'll shift and all of a sudden they're pulling you up. And you have to give them the opportunity to do that and trust that they can. And hopefully they show up for you. That was a long-winded hype list, but I'm just going to leave that there. That when I'm in a solo episode, it's like, what was my first one? Anyway, I am so happy that you're here and that you came and got hyped with me today. Thank you for coming along with this solo episode. I hope that you got something out of it. And I hope that something was encouraging for you to go out and increase communication in your life. So I appreciate you. I'm so grateful. And be kind to yourself today and every day.